It is also bittersweet to watch knowing what the women were dealing with behind the scenes. He became a worse and worse person to work for.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at the worst things Dan Schneider has been accused of by his colleagues, former employees, and others in the industry.
It was probably the wrongest thing I've ever seen happen to a woman in a professional environment ever.
His reaction to Raquel Lee Ballou's birthday cake. Raquel Lee Ballou was a regular on the first season of The Amanda Show, although she felt more like a guest star and would soon be phased out altogether. While Ballou enjoyed working with co-stars like Drake Bell, she's just one of the individuals who have called out Schneider for creating a toxic work environment, describing him as a, quote, tornado.
Dan was like a tornado. He'd come in and like, phew, you'd be like, wow, okay, what just happened? Dan showed up. The set would not feel the same when he would leave because, I think everybody was on their toes, scared.
Schneider's yelling had everyone on their toes, but Ballou felt singled out when the crew got her a cake for her 13th birthday. What started as a joyous celebration quickly turned sour when Schneider caught wind of the cake, complaining about its size.
Dan's really upset. Like, why'd you get her that cake? Like, that's a big cake. Like, she didn't need that big of a cake. And I was just like, and I felt it.
Schneider did not make Ballou feel welcome on set, a sentiment that was emphasized when she wasn't invited back without explanation.
I had to really pick myself back up and keep it moving in an industry that showed me very early on that it has no love for me at all.
Overworking employees. Even with child labor laws in place, numerous stars who grew up working on Nickelodeon shows have reflected on the long hours.
They would be like, hey, can you stay an extra however long? I guess, sure. You kind of look at your mom like, we're ignoring child labor laws again, do you know? All right.
It wasn't just the young stars who had to work late. According to Karen Finley Thompson, an editor on several Nickelodeon productions, her life revolved around the Schneider.
You had to be as good or better or put more hours in or do longer things than Dan did. And we all did it.
Getting fired was the alternative if you weren't willing to comply with his demanding schedule, which could last from 8 a.m. to midnight. There wasn't even time for a meal or bathroom break, according to Thompson, who had to be taken to the hospital at one point.
And as I'm leaving and curled over, I could hear someone say, how is the show going to get finished? And I just remember saying, I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Although Thompson regularly put work before her health, Schneider didn't make good on his promise to give her another job, favoring a man with fewer credentials, posting photos of underage actors' feet. Watching various Dan Schneider productions, fans have noticed an unusual fixation on feet. Schneider might not be the only creative figure with a foot fascination, but a few things separate him from Quentin Tarantino.
What's that American expression? If the shoe fits, you must wear it.
For starters, the feet highlighted in Schneider's work often belonged to underage actors. Secondly, it wasn't just in his shows. Zoe 101 star Alexa Nicholas recalls Schneider taking photos of cast members' feet, some of which he posted on social media.
He was walking around with dollar bills. That's what I remember. And he was telling the kids, come, I'll take photos of your feet and give you $1. Like, it was like some funny, hoax, thing. And I remember my mom going, no.
Schneider found it, quote, ridiculous when he was accused of having a foot fetish, saying, quote, kids find feet goofy and funny, and there was no effort to sexualize his young stars. Whatever Schneider's intent was, Nicholas's mother could tell this was unprofessional, forbidding her daughter from having her feet photographed.
It was something that a child wouldn't necessarily pick up on.
Right,
you would have to be an
course.
adult to understand that.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, feet. If he was going around asking for something else, we'd all go, whoa.
Yeah.
And you're fired.
Asking female co-workers for massages.
There was always someone massaging him. That's all I remember was some person on set massaging that guy.
Schneider has been repeatedly called out for sexism, requesting massages from women on set being one example. Amanda Bynes is the most high-profile person reportedly seen giving Schneider neck massages. Bynes has yet to comment on the massages and other allegations against Schneider. However, multiple female staffers have opened up about being pressured to massage their boss.
She got a text from him saying, come and massage me on the set. And she said, my God, doesn't he know I'm doing 2 shows? I'm so busy. And I could see that she was distraught, but she went anyway.
According to writer Jenny Kilgan, Schneider once offered to include one of her sketches on a show in exchange for a massage. While Schneider framed the proposition as a joke, Kilgan felt uncomfortable, but feared the consequences if she said no. Schneider has since expressed regret about the massages, among other things, although many have found his apologies to be too little, too late.
Dan was asking for this incredibly inappropriate thing for almost 2 decades. He was asking people at work to touch him.
Allegations of racism.
I understood the magnitude of being the token Black girl, but I didn't realize how significant that was until years later.
All that started with an almost half-Black cast. As Schneider ascended the Nickelodeon ladder, though, most of his shows seemed to spotlight white actors. That's not to say there were no people of color, but performers like Raquel Lee Ballou and Giovanni Samuels sensed they were being tokenized. Some roles were also accused of perpetuating stereotypes, such as when Brian Hearn played a cookie dealer.
And I was like, oh, the Black kid gets to be?
Schneider has said that diversity is, quote, very important to him, taking pride in shows like Kenan and Kel. While Kenan Thompson didn't recall any negative experiences with Schneider, he doesn't remember him being on set that often, noting that Kenan and Kel had a different showrunner. Some got the impression that Schneider favored white performers, with Black cast members getting sidelined.
Dan had a nicer relationship with some of the other white kids. I didn't feel close to him at all.
Contributing to Jeanette McCurdy's trauma, Jeanette McCurdy wasn't the first person to speak out against Schneider, but she has been among the most vocal, with the publication of her memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died.
I have said everything that I want to say about that in the book. I hope people, you know what, I hope that anybody whose attention might be piqued by these headlines will consider reading the book, because I've said everything in as articulate and thoughtful of a way as I can manage.
As you can tell from that title, Schneider wasn't the only one who made McCurdy's upbringing so traumatic. The Sam Puckett actress nonetheless felt victimized by Schneider, aka the creator.
But she can't say, I didn't like that, or she can't not have a sense of humor about it, and she can't not play with it because she has to. You have to be nice, because that's the only way that you're going to get through.
In addition to being one of the women asked to give the creator massages, McCurdy recalls being coerced by him to drink alcohol while underage. Although some called McCurdy the creator's new favorite, she found him, quote, mean-spirited, controlling, and terrifying. McCurdy claims she was offered $300,000 not to discuss her Nickelodeon experiences, quote, specifically related to the creator. Needless to say, she rejected the hush money.
Not doing it, not taking it. And then I do remember leaning against, I think I talk about this in the book, but I lean against my bed and I'm like, well, shoot, that could have put my nieces through college. Like, that was some good money. But I am ultimately proud of my decision there.
Sexualizing underage actors. Honestly, a lot of the show's 90s and 2000s kids grew up on snuck-in innuendos. Some moments from Schneider shows have aged worse than others, however. The main point of concern stems from the wardrobe department, putting young actresses in short skirts and revealing outfits.
We don't need to be hyper-conservative of bodies, but that didn't represent even me as a girl at that age.
Via reps, Schneider denied sexualizing young stars, arguing that other adults were on set and the network approved everything. Beyond what viewers saw on screen, though, several stars felt exposed behind the scenes.
But he would regularly pick the skirts, and they were so short that I was required to wear biker shorts
just
underneath.
in case.
But the biker shorts were too long, so they had to cut them.
Oh my gosh.
Jeanette McCurdy remembers Schneider taking a photo of her in a bikini, while Alexa Nicholas says he regularly sat in on costume fittings despite not being required to be there. Although a curtain was drawn, knowing that Schneider was on the other side made for an uneasy experience.
And I would come out and I would do a spin, and then he would look at the wardrobe artist and say, can I have the Polaroids?
Underpaying and undermining female writers. Given its leading lady, one would expect the Amanda Show's writing staff to be ample with female voices. When the show premiered, Jenny Kilgan and Christy Stratton were the only women in the writer's room. Both felt belittled by Schneider, who allegedly said, quote, women can't write funny.
She challenged us to name a funny female writer. And he said this to the writers in the writer's room.
What's worse, Kilgan and Stratton were required to split their salary while male writers were paid in full. Schneider claims that he wasn't responsible for finances, and splitting salaries wasn't uncommon for new writers. Kilgan argued this was against union rules, however, taking it up with the WGA.
Can there be teams on this show? And they said no.
Jenny told me this, and I was going like, wow, they were trying to pull a fast one.
When Schneider found out, he allegedly threatened to get Kilgan blacklisted over the phone. While Stratton was supposedly fired, Kilgan quit and pursued legal action, settling for an unknown amount.
But it had a lasting impact on my career. I mean, I knew that. I knew that this was the end of my career, so it had better be worth it. Like, it had better stop. And to learn that it didn't stop, that it was all for nothing.
Temper tantrums and crude comments. In the wake of Schneider's exit from Nickelodeon, various co-writers came forward, saying he was, quote, prone to tantrums and angry emails.
Dan would come down and yell and scream. There was many times where I had to go, okay, you're creating an atmosphere on this set that is not healthy.
Jenny Kilgan remembers Schneider messaging her to scream degrading comments like, quote, I'm an idiot. As inconsiderate as Schneider could be on set, he was apparently at his worst in the writer's room, where he forced women into humiliating situations and regularly made vulgar jabs at their expense.
And he would always present it like a joke, you know, and he would be laughing while he said it. But you always felt like disagreeing with Dan or saying or standing up for yourself could result in you getting fired.
Jeanette McCurdy said of Schneider in an interview, quote, it was so commonplace, his behavior, and it was so accepted because everyone was scared of losing their job. Schneider has described some of his past comments as, quote, snarky. Based on the effect his words had on numerous former colleagues, snarky hardly sums it up.
Thinking about it now, yeah, it's like, oh boy, I just think of that poor girl and what she had to, go through.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Predators on sets. 2 predators worked on Dan Schneider's shows, production assistant Jason Handy and dialogue coach Brian Peck. Schneider claims that he wasn't the one who hired Peck. To be fair, Drake Bell credited Schneider for reaching out upon learning about Peck.
And Dan just goes, you don't need to talk anymore about it. That's all I needed to hear. Are you okay? Do you need anything from me? Is there anything that you need?
The fact that Schneider was among the few Nickelodeon execs who called Bell shows that there was a much larger problem with the network and industry as a whole. That doesn't mean Schneider wasn't part of the issue.
When you look at having multiple child predators who worked at Nickelodeon, it raises some confusing questions on who to hold accountable.
His shows gained a reputation for hostile working conditions where people were afraid to speak their minds. Even if Schneider wasn't directly responsible for Handy and Peck's actions, he still contributed to an unsafe environment where predators could get away with heinous acts for so long.
Dan's presence in the room could change the vibe of the room. Everybody would kind of just be like, okay, shut up.
Has your opinion on Dan Schneider changed? Let us know in the comments.
In my opinion, Dan Schneider is a creep. Full blown, my opinion, creep.